Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe, the crazy place, the crazy house. Grab your cup of coffee or tea and sit back. Let's chat about what is going on in the stars today, what's going on up in the sky. So, I just have to chuckle because of the craziness that has been going on technologically for me. I mean, I can't even get upset anymore, but this morning, uh, there a little snafu in setting up the broadcast, and somehow I managed to figure it out, and here we are live, and I hope everybody finds me over here. Because that's just the way it goes. So, and now of course I see Mimi. Good morning. I'm glad you found me. So I am in the right place, apparently. So let's just chat about what's happening today. Today is not a particularly bad day. We have the moon in Taurus. It's an out of void, of course, which yesterday, most of the day, it's spent in that void. And today it is full blown moving forward in the sign of Taurus, where it early this morning conjuncted with the planet Uranus. And, it's funny because sometimes things trigger me to just warn my husband about, what's going on. This morning, as he left on his bicycle, I said, the moon is conjunct Uranus today, so be careful. And he said, okay, yeah. So then he texts me later and tells me about all the quirky, weird things that were happening while he was riding his bike this morning. Like somebody blew through a stop sign, and if he hadn't been, paying attention, he could have gotten hit. All kinds of things like that. So it's always a good idea to warn people when you know ahead of time that something's happening or that there's this possibility. But that's early in the day today, and then we move on from that. We don't have to worry about Uranus today. The moon's already 2 degrees past it, and that means we are freeing ourselves from that one. And the moon is then moving on to a square with Mars. And let's see if it's already lined up with that one. It'll be another few hours before it connects with that. And then it will be trine Saturn, and that is also later in the day. So really, a square to Saturn is just really feeding us juice, feeding us energy to get things done and to prime the pump, if you will, for the action of the day. However, the moon is emotional and Mars is action oriented. So Mars is more no nonsense. Let's get things done and move forward, while the moon may be hanging around a little bit with sensibilities and practicalities and wanting to be more in tune with timing. And Mars, of course, never patient with timing. We know that, right? So today, then, as we move into the day, we'll have more energy to get things done and less likelihood of the upsets from earlier in the morning. I would say I've even had a Uranus kind of morning, as in when I was putting together the show this morning, I totally forgot to put the description of what we were going to talk about into the body of the broadcast. Well, in Be Live, you cannot go back and edit. So used to be I could go back in and I could delete that broadcast and start another one, which is kind of a pain in the neck, right? To have to go back and start something new. But hey, at least I knew how to do it. Well, now you can't do it that way. Now I had to go into Facebook and delete it. And the fact that it was still sitting there in Be Live made it confusing for me when I started the show this morning, which is why I accidentally started the wrong stream. And then I saw nothing going on and I was like, checked in on Facebook, found out, oops, wrong stream, went to the other one, and voila, here I was. So unexpected things this morning, perhaps. The moon hasn't separated all that far yet from Uranus, but after a while, it's done. Yay. Okay, let's say good morning to people who are just joining us. Mimi, we said good morning to you. Brenda Gagnon, good morning. And Ashley, good morning to you. And yes, Terry is definitely safe. Good morning, Linda. Great to see you out there this morning. So let's talk about the rest of the day, because today's biggest news, and I love that we can have the scrolling thing down here at the bottom. I just haven't figured out how to do the spacing yet. But the big news of the day is Mars in trine to Jupiter. So a trine is a 120-degree angle or relationship between the two planets. And that implies an ease and flow between the two. So the energy of Mars, action, meets up with the enthusiasm and optimism of Jupiter, and together they can flow in a very powerful way. And likely this is a really feel good kind of day. And to me, the sun is out, it's bright this morning, the air feels crisp, it's good. It has this good feeling, it makes me feel enthusiastic. But you have to remember one thing. The big thing is that we are in a Mercury retrograde until July 31st. That's not until next Wednesday, I believe it is. And then we are also in the waning phase of the moon. And that means that it isn't a really good time to start something new. So even though we may be enthusiastic and optimistic and have a lot of energy toward doing things, it isn't a great time, timing wise, universally, to start something new. However, it is a great day if you want to take a look at projects that you have half finished or things that are in the works. It would be a really good day to get those things done, to clean up projects or to put the finishing touches on something. But this is also a day for us. We can make new plans, right? You can look at the plan to promote something or to put out a project or to start something new without starting it, but doing all of the legwork, right? Doing the research, perhaps getting the products that you need in order to do this, writing up the task list or the goals for the project. All of that stuff is supported. You can even, at this point in time today, reevaluate your goals that you already have, right? The things that you've been working on, and where are you in relationship to that? Is it time to look at maybe moving off in a different direction, or is it time to take the next step, or is it time maybe to go backwards a step? And that's the energy for today, right? That reevaluation. But hold on starting any of those new steps or instituting anything new until you get a little bit more. Well, let's see. We have the new moon on July 31st, on the same day that Mercury turns retro or turns direct. So we have like a big green light next week. So we might as well wait for that new green light, right? And do everything that we can to finish things up here in the moment. So doing the things that you can now without trying to start the new and the flashy and the big, because it isn't supported. Right. That's the thing. It isn't supported. Good morning, Diane. Good morning, Colleen. Nice to see you ladies out there. And anybody else who's listening. I just want to say briefly that this show, after I complete it in the morning, goes on to Blog Talk Radio and then is broadcast in podcast form to all of the podcast places. So iTunes and what's that other one? Stitcher, and there's many others. And so for those of you who are listening to me after the fact, I want to say, welcome to you all, and that you can also join us live each weekday morning here at 8 o'clock on the West Coast or 11 o'clock on the East Coast for the live broadcast of all of the things that are happening for the day. And I know that some of you are listening through podcast form and hear me doing readings for people or doing card readings for people. And I would love it if you hung in there through that broadcast, because sometimes I've had this happen so many times that I'm doing a reading for somebody and I'm thinking to myself, did the universe cause me to pull this card because I needed to know this? So there's a lot of times that even though I may be doing something for someone else, there is something important for you in it as well. Otherwise, why would you tune in, right? Why would you be there? So, and then some days the show is longer than others. I think Blog Talk only allows the 1 hour slot, but sometimes the show's shorter. This week, things have been a little bit faster because we simply don't have as much stuff going on, which is kind of a good thing, right? We've had several weeks, several, maybe even a couple of months worth of high octane, many transits, busyness, craziness. So it feels unnatural to me to suddenly be done in 30 minutes. But, if you go back a couple of years, we certainly were done that early. And that's because there wasn't as much stuff to talk about. But today today we also have the beginning of the new human design week. So today the sun has moved into the gate 31, which is a gate of leadership, and the earth at the gate 41, which rests down at the very bottom of the chart in the gate of imagination. And it is the gate, by the way, the earth sitting today at the gate of the new year when in human design. So the new year in human design begins when the sun is at the gate 41. So let me see if I have a little chart here I can show you. So the sun today up here at gate 31, which is on the throat center leading down to the identity center right here. And this chart is not for today. This was from someday last week. And then the gate 41 is right here down at the very bottom, and it's moving over toward the emotional center. And I wish I had drawn up a chart this morning. Let me take a look really quickly at a Jovian chart and see what it looks like, even though I won't be able to print it and show it to you guys. I just want to see if we're still reflectors today. Nope, we are not. So, but today we're projectors. And isn't that interesting? So in this chart, we have the head and the ajna and the throat and the identity center all defined. And that makes perfect sense to me that that's happening right now, because remember that we had Mars moved into the gate 7, and that connects up the channel of leadership. And then we had gate 61, which is where Pluto is, connect up with the moon. So just for part of the day, we have a defined head and a defined ajna. So we may be stuck in what we think about today. We may be sort of caught up in thinking we know what we know, or believing that we have certainty or truth. What we may be certain that we think we know the truth. But for those of you who really don't have that defined head or ajna by birth, you really don't. It's just temporary. So don't take action on certainty today unless it is something that you are already working on, that you have been working on, and that you know your type and your strategy, and you're working in tandem with that. And of course, the connection from the throat down to the identity center through the channel of leadership. Leadership is an interesting gate in human design, or the whole of the channel of leadership. I think we talked a little bit about it earlier in the week, where it is really a part of our human design in the gift, in the, let me see how I can frame this. So in the gene keys, we have things framed in the shadow, in the gift, and then in the siddhi, or the highest expression of the energy. So we're sitting in the shadow, and we are at times moved up to the gift, right? We are here to aspire to be in the gift of all of these particular gates. In this particular gate, the sun is in the gate that in the shadow is arrogance. And you saw, if you watched any of the meetings yesterday, or the interviews with Robert Mueller and the reaction of the commander-in-chief to what was happening, you saw a lot of arrogance. You saw a lot of arrogance in the way he was questioned. You saw even, perhaps you could say, some passive arrogance in he himself. And so arrogance is alive and well on the planet. And today, for the next week, we're here to look at that shadow, the shadow of arrogance, because the gift level, the level that we're aspiring to, is the gate of leadership. And leadership is not something that's a grab for, right? It isn't a grab for power. And it isn't it isn't dictatorship. It isn't authoritarian at all. Here, the connection is from the soul to the throat. It is about where you are invited in to be the leader. And an invitation may look like an election, right? Where you're elected to be the leader. It may look like you being asked or invited from a group or a community to be a part of the leadership team. But where we are honestly going here with leadership is not to more of the hierarchical model that we have, but it's very clear through our human design that leadership becomes by community, or becomes by a synarchy. where all participants have equal say, and it is by agreement, right, that we move forward in leadership. And so the highest expression of this gate, the highest thing for us to aspire to, is humility, right? Humility being the exact opposite of arrogance here, in that it is a humble position that we must come from, in that we were asked or invited or elected to lead people, to lead a nation, to lead a tribe or a community. It doesn't matter what the leadership position is, but having been invited in, it is then incumbent upon you as the leader to let go of arrogance and be leading in a humble, or in a in humility. Try to say all those words fast. Let's see. Good morning, Lynn. She said it's 11:11, which would be my 8:11. Of course, that was a while ago, but thanks for pointing that out. Elisa, good morning to you. And any questions anybody has, please, put them in there so I can see them. It's interesting in this new way of looking at it, because instead of, like it used to be, the newer comments appeared on top, it actually goes down the roll. So it's down down the column. And so it makes more sense to me in some ways. I was always scrambling trying to find the newest comments, but now it's right there. So Lynn says, hi, Janet. I'm wondering, are we really projectors or reflectors for the day, depending on the just now chart? Or do we take those gates channels and integrate them with our own chart? Boom, and have a flavor of those. So since I'm a projector, I won't ever truly know what it feels like to be a reflector, since I have already 2 channels. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let me unpack that one a little bit. So when we look at a day, when we look at transits, it is an addition to the energies that you already carry within yourself. So when we're looking at a reflector day, like we've had several of them where there was nothing really in our chart or in the chart of the day except hanging gates. So those are days where likely we're going to be trying to make lots of different connections with people. The most important part of that information, though, is that it is the people being born that day who are coming in as reflectors. This morning, people being born are all projectors, right? Because the projector energy is so very powerful. And in your case as a projector, in my case as a generator, and in any whatever type you are, the day's energy suddenly gives you access to centers in definition that you might not normally have. So for example, in my own human design chart, I have an open head and an open ajna. So the top 2 things are open, but the energy of the day has them defined. So I'm suddenly tapped into that. So I have to understand that the things I think might be certain are really maybe just artifacts of the planets that are transiting through, and could be gone like this. In fact, would be gone like this because it's the moon making that connection. May even be already, gone. No, I just did that just now chart, so it's still there. And for my own part, let's see, the moon, was it? That was that. I can't even do that one. So the other 2 things that were defined were the throat and the identity center. Well, in my chart, I already have the identity center defined, so it's not a big change, but I have an open throat. So now with a defined throat, would I be tempted to speak into areas that I'm not aware of, or I'm not invited to, or in a social situation, might I blurt things out that I wouldn't normally do because my throat is defined suddenly? And let's see, I've got to remember what defined the throat here. I think it was coming up from, it's the channel of leadership, of course, that is defining the throat for everybody today. So make sure in any of your interactions with people, don't just make a grab for power. Don't just elect yourself to become the leader of something. But if you're asked to be the leader of something, if you're asked to lead, guide, manage, orchestrate, coordinate something, then use your authority, your inborn authority, to determine whether that is something you want to do or not. But don't look at an opening and say, I want that, and then go for it, right? Unless that's how your normal energy is. I hope that makes sense for everybody, because that's kind of, you almost have to have, and I tell people this all the time, have your own personal astrology chart and your own human design chart with you in the morning when you're listening to this broadcast, because then you can look directly at your own stuff and see how you personally might be being affected. So I know today the head, the ajna, and the throat are defined in the day, and that's going to put conditioning pressure on me to behave in a different way, in maybe an inauthentic way. Right. And I know that going into it. Luckily, I don't have any big plans to go anywhere today. So I won't be out and about trying to put myself in positions that I don't need to be in. But who knows, right? The day is young. So that's part of the beauty of all of this, is knowing yourself so that you can understand what's happening during the day. Okay. Lynn, thanks for taking. Yeah, you're welcome. So you will, to answer her last part of that question, is you're never going to become something that you weren't at birth. You will always have that. That is your authentic self. But these other things color your identity. And that happens also when we're interacting with one another. So when you are teaching a class, let's say, or when you are a participant in a class, or when you are out socially, or you're in the grocery store, other people are also, their energies, their identities are bleeding into yours and causing you to change the way that you're behaving, in possibly. Right. It's why you have to understand who you are, so that when you do begin to work with other people, you don't take on their identities, or you don't take on their truths, or you don't take on their voice, or their powerful sacral energy, if you're a projector, a manifester, or a reflector, right? Because then you start taking action and burning yourself out. So know yourself. You're welcome, Lynn. You're welcome. Brenda says, I need a human design chart. Well, Brenda, you can go to www.living-astrology.com. And on my website there, you'll see a place where you can order your own human design chart. And you can also get a copy of your natal astrology chart, which I would say is oh so helpful, right? And then I tell everybody, get a little 3-hole punch. Put that in, a binder, or a notebook of some sort, or a, peachy even, to keep, so that when we are referring to these things, you can look at your own chart. And after a while, you begin to resonate with your own chart, and you go, oh yeah, so today the head's defined, and my head isn't. So I know I'm going to be inspired, or have ideas that might not be my own, or feel pressure to do something, or to answer questions that aren't necessarily my questions. And I know some of those things you don't know necessarily from where you're sitting right now. But the more that you learn about yourself, the more that you learn about the energy centers, the gates, and the channels, the more that you'll be able to do that, right? You'll be able to look in and just go, oh, that's what that means. All right. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Anybody else have any questions about that? If you do, go ahead and type those in there. I have my natal chart, but this is helpful. Okay, good. So now let's go on to some of the other energies, human design wise. We happen to have also Mercury and Venus changing gates today. Mercury in retrograde means we've already experienced the gate he's moving back to, but it doesn't matter, because we are going to experience it through the filter of the first time it happened for us. And he's moved back to the gate 62, which is prompting us to be in the practical, the sensible, and the considerate, and the unassuming edge of our minds, right? So we're not really taking action on anything big, but we are looking at what is practical, what makes sense, right? What we're paying attention to the details of something, instead of just looking at the big picture, which Mars trine Jupiter today would really love us to just see the big picture and to fly off the handle and go in that direction. But Mercury putting a little bit of a brake on everything and saying, is that practical? Does that make sense? Is that grounded in reality? So for the next several days, while Mercury is backing up to go direct. We are looking at that part of the plan, that part of our lives, and looking deeper, looking at the solidity or the relative solidity of the plan. Now, Venus today is not in retrograde, so this is her first time moving into this gate, but we recognize it because Mercury was here, Mars was here, and the sun has been here. And Venus today is at the gate 56. This is the gate of the storyteller. And remember, we talked about what are the stories that we tell? What do we tell everybody about ourselves? What do we tell ourselves about what's going on, about what our power is, or our powerlessness? I'm sorry, I have the thirsties this morning. I think it's allergies being triggered out of the blue. So the stories that we're telling ourselves about where we've been, about where we're going, about our potential, about our lack of potential. Today's a great day to start looking at that. What are the stories that you tell about your relationships? So some of you out there who might be single, who are looking, for love and romance, what's the story that you tell yourself about that? About I never find the right person. There aren't any people around me that are potentials. Whatever the story is, looking at that story and asking yourself, is it true? There's something more here, though. If you look deeper at Venus at this gate, it's about being intentional. And what does that mean, right? Being intentional is that I know my mind, I know what I want, I know my desires, and now I'm going to intentionally move step by step toward achieving that goal or that desire or that dream. So being intentional. And intentional might mean that you have to tweak the story, right? Depending on what the story is that you've always told. And then also trusting in yourself, trusting that you know what's correct for you, that you know where the right place to be is, that if your intuition is speaking to you loudly about something, that you can trust that voice. And it is a really great time. These next several days, let's see, how many days do we have of this wonderful energy? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that right? So through the 29th, so almost to the end of the month from here, to be able to look at this energy and to evaluate what our beliefs are that are shaping our reality. And, going to the depth of that, looking deeper, not just at the superficial, even though the superficial is important here, but getting to a little bit below that. What is the real belief that I'm holding about relationship, about money, about values, about the world, about who I am, about what I'm capable of? And, we could go on. So really taking that and looking deeper. And while you're doing that, asking yourself the question, is that true? Is that really true? Because if it isn't, let it go, right? Or change the story. What are you telling yourself every day? I mean, there are people that come on here in the morning, and I'm not going to name names because I think everybody would know who they are if this is you, and you always have the same issues. You have the same questions that over and over again. Well, what is the story you're telling yourself about that? And by the way, this is not to make you bad or anything, because that's not the case, because I do it too. Right. I find myself re-experiencing the same things over and over ad nauseum. So here's an opportunity to break that pattern and look at, why is it always happening this way? What is my belief? What keeps this alive in me? What keeps this alive in my reality? Right? Is it a thought? Is it something I do, something I don't do? A belief or a thought form that has become encrusted in my reality. And here's your opportunity, everybody, to change that. Let go of that. And this also requires a very open and honest evaluation of all of those things that you say, of all of those stories that you tell, right? An honest evaluation. Is this true? Well, It may have been true. It may have been a part of your stories, your mythic, your travels, your quest, right? Your hero's journey. It could be a part of it. But what put it in context in the now? Is it happening this minute? Or what in the past is informing your now, and how do I want to tweak that so that my future or my next steps are more toward what I want, are more intentional? Okay. Colleen, eclipse season brought me clarity, thank goodness. Yes, me too. You know what else eclipse season did for me? And I don't know that it's eclipse season. I don't know what it is exactly. But there are some really big things that I've let go of in my mind and in my heart over the last couple of months. This isn't something that just happened this month, but it's almost like and I'm hoping I'm not tempting faith by even tempting fate, excuse me, by even bringing this up. But it's almost like I look back and that was another me that was experiencing those things. And that this me now isn't experiencing that, nor do I want to experience that anymore. It's almost like, okay, done that, been there, done that, done with that, going on. So that's an interesting, it is exactly like going through the exit of a turnstile and that you can't get back through, like when you, I can't even think, like when you're going to a concert or something, you can't get back through the same turnstile that you came through. That's what I feel like that moon or that eclipse season brought me, is that there's no way backwards. And from now on, I have to go forward. And it's a little scary, I have to admit, but it's also very refreshing and very hopeful, very almost audacious feeling like, oh, you're going to dare to be that. You're going to dare to do that. You're going to dare to resonate with that as opposed to this old stuff. So I think we've all had that possibility. So don't go back through the turnstile, right? Don't push yourself backwards. Go forward with it. Mimi says, definitely feeling more energy than I have in quite some time, unstuck. And Mimi, you're moving towards your solar return, and that should be giving you a glimpse, by the way, of what is going on for you in your new year, right? Because those energies that we really feel close to our birthday are sort of the call to what comes next for us. So I think I take that as a good sign. She said, though still a wee bit indecisive, like I'm yet to know what colors or subject to play with today. It is all good. Right? Because I think the big things don't come until after Mercury is not retrograde and we have the new moon, right? The second new moon, the playful Leo new moon at the end of this month. So all good things are coming, I think. Colleen, yes, as yuck as of something I was so confused and lost. I feel like you, stuff released, moving forward, even though scary. Yeah, I think there's always, we always have a little bit of fear of the unknown, right? Because we know our stories, and there's, even though we may not like that we don't have the best relationship, or we're not, we're dealing with health issues or money issues, or we're dealing with not finding the right job or not having enough clients or any of those issues, we derive comfort from that same old story, right? Because it's the known value. And when you give up that story and you can't go back to it, then the forced position is to look forward, is to be right here in this moment, and in this moment making new decisions, right? Making new choices. And those choices can't be based on the past. It has to be based more on the heart's desire and where I want to go from here. That's what intention is, right? Unless your intention is to keep repeating the same old story, then it's time for you to make new choices that move in a different direction. I hope that helps everybody. Mimi says, woohoo, then this will be a lively year. Thank you for the input. Absolutely. Right. And, not only that, Mimi, but your birthday's so close to August 11th, which, I don't know that I've spoken much about this, but that begins a roll of energy in our charts for the next several weeks after that. That is extraordinarily playful, happy, freeing. What other words can I use? Creative, blasting, our minds like breaking open. because there'll be a pile up of planets in Leo, highly creative energy, and then moving on to Virgo after that, which in Leo and Virgo are linked via the fifth house in your chart and the sixth house in your chart. The fifth house is the house of creativity, joy, expansion, and then risk taking. And then the sixth house is Virgo's territory, which is the work that you have to do to achieve the dream, right? So the fifth house, we have the creative impulse, but the sixth house says, well, this is where the rubber meets the road. So I can't just sit back and keep this relegated to my imagination. I have to be able to bring it in and ground it in some form of reality. I have to take steps. I can't just sit with it. So that's where the energy is, sort of building for us as we move on, is to the creative and expansion energies. But then we also have to be able to take steps, right? Take action steps. Good morning, Patricia. Glad to see you. And Colleen. Okay. YK equals, oh God, me and my not being a millennial. You're not necessarily millennial either. But those abbreviations that everybody uses, I'm like, what do you mean? My son did something in a text to me this morning. I'm like, huh? Like what? He knew what it meant, but I did not. And there's just I maybe somewhere someone has created a cheat sheet of these shortcut things that people do in their text messages. so that people like me who don't know them all yet can learn. So thanks, Colleen. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's take a look today at the Pleiadian-Earth energy of the day. Remember, this is a calendar. And those of you who are just listening to us for the first time today, here is a reminder of what that calendar looks like. And yes, it is still available. The Pleiadian-Earth energy calendar for 2019. The 2021 will be out in the next couple of months. And this is a calendar that is very reminiscent of the Mayan calendar. And in fact, the Mayans said that they received the information for their astrology and their calendar from the gods, right? That from outer space, if you will, or from other systems somewhere, star systems, star people. And it is the Pleiadians who they most likely got this information from. And at least that's what the Pleiadian people who channel the Pleiadians say, that that's where that came from. So this system of calendar and astrology is about our evolution of consciousness. So it's about the spiral, right? It's about the spiral rather than the linear. So where our Gregorian calendar is linear, the first is followed by the second, which is followed by the third, the fourth, the fifth, with no real sense of what does that mean, right? What does that mean? What does it mean that today's July 25th? It has no real meaning other than mechanical and just sort of that's what the day is. But in the Mayan calendar, or in the Pleiadian-Earth energy calendar, it gives us an idea of what the energy of the day is about. Today is 6 remembering. And the number 6 tells us the universal energy of the day. So universal energy is that all of the life in all of the planets and all of the solar system would resonate to this number, while the remembering, which is manik in Mayan, which is the symbol for the hand, tools, also sometimes represented by deer, meaning deer, energy, is just here for the earth, right? So we are a combination of these two things. And, we've seen this moving on a spiral. And the number 6 is a day for flow. The key word for the number 6 is flow, which means movement on all levels. And when we say all levels, that's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Movement, meaning taking new steps, going places. Travel is also indicated on a day like today. And the number 6 reminds us that there's a flow to things, and that it's only when we get caught up in going against the flow or fighting against the flow that we become stressed, or we have tension, or we get anxious. And if we just go with the flow, then we find ourselves in a space of ease and grace. So that's that reminder on a universal level today. The energy of remembering is about being in peace, being peaceful, peace seeking, being cooperative, right? Being a team player, uh, but watching out for becoming overly compromising, right? You don't want to give away the farm just to belong, but there are ways to make compromises. There are ways to cooperate, and there are ways to be at peace, right? Peace seeking in the flow, flowing with peacekeeping. It's a lovely day. It is. That's part of why I think this is a feel good day. I also noticed this morning, now, yesterday was pretty much a crazy day with all of the things going on in the news. But as I was looking at my news feed this morning, and I'm just checking again to make sure I wasn't crazy, I didn't see one word about yesterday's intelligence briefings or anything like that. There's other things, right, that are uh, in the news that aren't necessarily happy-go-lucky positive stuff. But yesterday's big news is today's not being mentioned. I mean, I suppose if I went looking for it, I would find it, but it's not in the headlines. Interesting, right? It takes us out of that void. I told you yesterday, anyway, it wasn't going to go anywhere because it was the void of course moon. They picked the worst day ever to be interviewing the poor man. And and while there were some occasional sparks, there really wasn't anything new or exciting that comes of that. And then today it's like all but lost, right? It's not being mentioned. And that's because the void, now we are on to something new. But staying in the flow, and this is a much more peaceful oriented day than a day of stirring the pot and creating trouble. So I hope that helps people. Let's see. Good morning, Allison. Good morning, Marissa. And I hope you ladies are doing well today. Allison said they did Google it. They did what? I don't know what they did. Netlingo.com. Oh, she's talking about the list of acronyms. Awesome. Thank you for the link. I'm going to print that out. And my kids are all going to be like, wow, where did mom learn all this stuff? Thank you, Allison. I appreciate that. Mimi says, Leo sun and Virgo moon, very ready for the forward momentum. Absolutely. I forgot you had a Virgo moon. We share that. And so here we are moving into what is going to be a Leo new moon. So interesting because literally for you, Mimi, you have a solar return happening. So a new injection of creative energy with that Leo sun, but the moon in your chart in Leo, and I can't remember what degree it's at. I suppose I could find it at some point. Is where you are in the dark of your moon, your own natal moon cycle, right? Because your moon, your personal moon begins at whatever degree it is in Virgo. So you're sort of in that balsamic phase, the ending phase of your moon cycle. So it may be still a while yet before, maybe a few days after the new moon that you get your personal new moon and you're like, oh yeah, now I got it. So don't be surprised if it's, a little lag time going on there for you in that. All right. Good morning, Natasha. She says, funny, I was having a dream of walking by some storefronts thinking what was there that is not anymore. Some empty stores were under construction. Next, there was the store where they did daycare. In the store, a baby was on the floor with a sitter crying as she was not smoothed by what she saw on the computer screen that the sitter was trying to make her happy with. Great metaphor for what's going on in the planets right now. Are we under construction? Are we not happy about what we are being shown? Yeah. I've been immersed the last few days in looking ahead at 2020, not because I've already written the Energy Almanac, and that, by the way, is in almost ready to go to press and will be available likely in September, October. So the Energy Almanac, which I had sitting here, it's probably on this mess of a desk in front. Oh, here it is. Under another pile. The Energy Almanac. This is 2019's version. 2020's will be out in the fall, I believe. And I write the astrology for this. And it gives you next year's, where this year's was all by the month. Next year's is by the week. So week by week look at all of the astrological transits and the moons and what have you. So be looking for me to announce when that's available. Um, so I was immersed in 2020 at one point while I was writing that, but now I'm immersed in 2020 because I'm trying to pick out what are the major themes, what's building, and there's the Saturn Pluto conjunction. Then there's Jupiter, which December of this year moves into Capricorn. So we have a lot of intensity building in those outer planets and the transpersonal planets. So the inner planets are Mars, Venus, the moon, Mercury, the sun. Did I miss one? Mars, Mercury, Venus, the sun, and the moon. Okay, yeah, those five. And those are the personal planets. That means they affect us personally in our own personal lives. So what's going on with them is very important to you. The Jupiter, Saturn, they're the planets that sort of they're more social oriented. And so they're the bridge builder between the personal planets and the collective or the transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and almost all of the newer planets and points like Eris and what have you, Sedna, Ceres, Juno, Vesta, all those are further out, and but they sit between either Mars and Jupiter, or they're even beyond that. And so we have this collection of energies that are pushing social change, that are pushing a new way of being in community. And we're not in it yet. Right now it's the bigger guys that are all in it and kind of re-establishing a dynamic in the outer world for us. Our turn comes later in 2020 when Mars turns retrograde, or when Mars in Aries begins to square all of those planets in Capricorn and across the way in Cancer. And by opposition, those things that might be happening in Libra. And then Venus will turn retrograde next year. And so we have some, very busy things for us personally that maybe we're not even tapped into yet, as we're just watching the bigger outer world collapse and change and morph and reconstruct. So for right now, being your best self is the thing that you can do the best of, right? It for you watching your beliefs, for you getting your intentions straight, for you living from the heart, getting away from our dependence on the mind, is what you can do in preparation for what comes next, right? And I don't know that it will probably be March and April before we really start to see the personal influx of that energy. Although you're a human being on this planet while this social dynamic is changing, while this outer world is changing. So you are also in the effect of that. But personally, it'll be later in 2020 where these things really come home to roost. So remembering, all of these things that I'm teaching you now are things for you to just keep tucking away, right? Put them away, make notes, keep your chart, know yourself, learn yourself. You are your greatest asset. And knowing how your assets work is the best thing that you can have going forward, right? As the world begins to really change and resonate in new directions. So, and that isn't a bad thing. It's all perfectly, you came to this planet at this time for a reason, to be here now in this. So don't, give up on yourself now. Do everything you can to learn more about yourself, and, keep asking questions about who am I? What do I want? Where am I going? What makes me happy? Those are the things that you can do for yourself right now. Let's see. So thank you, Natasha, by the way, for that. Marisa, doing okay, processing a recent death in our family. I'm sorry to hear that. Getting the house ready in case we have guests. Had to buy a sleeper sofa, and it's been a comedy of errors getting it delivered here. But I stayed calm and it worked out. That's Mercury retrograde. Thank you very much. Gail, good morning. Londa, good morning. I'm excited. Tomorrow I get to see my old childhood friend. That'll be awesome. Gail, good morning, and hanging on to the forward current of this huge transformation for me while healing a slightly torn left knee, MCL. Big messages, trusting the forward momentum. Oh, yes. And Londa, yes, coming from the heart. Natasha, sending you love and angels through this time in your life. And I think that's probably being directed at Marissa. So, right, we have so much good stuff going on. So, today, the big news today, Moon and Taurus, our senses are all triggered. Be also aware of the need to hold on making big decisions or big changes, even though Mars is trine Jupiter and that feels good. It feels optimistic and we're confident and we want to because Mars is not patient. Take action. Only take action on the things that have already been available to you. Don't try to start something new. Be in the flow. Be in the flow. And the flow suggests right now that we are in a waning moon and we are also at the end of a Mercury retrograde. So we want to wait for the go, right? Or the green light before we make some big moves. Okay, last look here. Gail says, love these questions. I need to ask myself in the universe. Absolutely. Brenda, I have Scorpio and Venus, Mars and Neptune. And I think you mean that you have Venus, Mars, and Neptune in Scorpio, perhaps. And I feel like I'm experiencing all kinds of energies. Definitely that. Thank you. Marisa says, I completely forgot about Mercury. Mercury has been loud and annoying in my life this time and making me question my sanity on some days. It's just been crazy. And I realized why. And that's because he's been crossing over my ascendant. And so, of course, it puts me in a position of having to deal with him and totally didn't see that coming. I guess I saw that coming, but didn't think about the impact on me. I'm more worried about the impact on all of you. I wasn't thinking about the impact on me. And make no mistake, in October, when we again get to experience Mercury retrograde, I won't mistake that one. Now, just for you, Brenda, Mercury in October turns retrograde in Scorpio. So you may have some things coming to the surface for you through your relationships, through the actions that you take, and Neptune also through your spiritual world that you may want to address, right? So knowing what house Scorpio is in and where this will be affecting you. So it's from Halloween, when Mercury first turns retrograde, until November 18th, I believe it is, which also happens to be the day I believe that Neptune turns back to direct motion. So it could be a wonky time for all of us in terms of dreams and getting messages and being psychic and knowing what direction to go in. Things could be, secrets could be revealed at that point in time. It could be a really interesting time. All right. That is it for me this morning. Tomorrow is Friday. We'll be doing some card readings. We'll be looking ahead at the weekend. I can't even believe it's Friday, or close to the end of the week already. So if you want a card reading tomorrow, be prepared to tell me what deck you want to use and maybe have a question in your mind that you really want me to look at. And I will see you all tomorrow then, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. on the East Coast. Have a great day, everyone. Mwah! Much love to all of you. Bye for now. I forgot how to stop the broadcast now.